Okay, so for the first thing we're going to talk about is equations, and I'm just going to briefly go over this because it's just solving regular equations. First, distribute if it's necessary. Then combine like terms. Then you're going to use the inverse operations. In order to get all the variables on one side. And the constants on the other. So for inequalities, to solve inequalities, both of these are solving equations and inequalities. With inequalities, it's the same steps. The only thing you got to remember is to change the inequality if you multiply or divide by a negative number. With graphing linears, first I'm going to talk about finding the slope if you're given 2 points. I'm going to use those 2 points as x1, y1, x2, y2. The formula, you do need to remember y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Slope-intercept form. Is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Now to graph it, you first have to get it into slope-intercept form. So you got to solve for y. You graph the b on the y-axis because that's the y-intercept. Use the slope from the y-intercept. You start at the y-intercept, use the slope to find another point. When you're using the slope, rise up and run to the right if it's positive. If it's negative, rise down and to the right. And run to the right. A positive slope should be rising from left to right. A negative slope should be falling from left to right. However you want to put that on there. It's something you can double check every time. And for graphing inequalities, it's the same steps as graphing equations, and then you need to tell whether it's a dotted line or solid line. If it's dotted, it's just going to be less than or greater than. If it's dotted, it's going to be greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Let me rewrite that. Then you need to shade 1/2. If it's in slope-intercept form, greater than, you shade up, Any of the less than, you shade down. You could also plug in a point. I would go back to the original inequality. For writing inequalities or equations, find the m and the b, the slope and the y-intercept. For the slope, you must use two exact points. The only difference for figuring out how to write the inequality is deciding which sign to use. I'm not going to write that, but you can if you need to. The one thing with word problems, the one thing with the word problems is to label the unknowns. And then you have to try and interpret the words into symbols to either write the equation or the inequality. But the biggest thing that I see people not doing is labeling the unknowns.